Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, over the weekend we had released to us brand new data from the long-range European outlook, and it's going to tell us what to expect this winter, at least from that forecast perspective. So in order to understand, how to interpret those forecasts, I want to do a little bit of forecast verification first. So over here on the left, what are you looking at? That is a map produced back in August, giving us the September, October, November precipitation pattern outlook. Now, when you look at these maps, they're expressed in anomalies, so differences from normal. But we need to look at it, like I said a moment ago, in terms of the pattern. You can see I was forecasting wetter than average conditions for the Northwest, dry throughout a broad sector of the interior U.S., and then wet here along the East Coast. Now remember, this included the tail end of the hurricane season, but what you've got over here is the verification. And overall, if you just step back and say, did the model at least grab the pattern correct? Well, we see wetter conditions in the Northwest. We see dry from California through parts of the interior of the United States, and wet conditions here over parts of the South and Southeast. So I have to look at that over there on the left and go, the model did a decent job. No, it's not perfect. And no, it cannot predict individual events because it's looking at a 3-month average. But overall, it picked up on the pattern pretty well. Well, how about temperatures? Again, over here on the left, that was the forecast from August for the September, October, November time period. Warmer than average conditions west, warmer than average along the coast. And if you look at the comparison, well, this is what actually happened across North America. You can see it was warmer here and warmer than average there. And all of this cold air that you see here came out in October. Now, what's interesting about that is we were forecasting warmth there. But remember, it was really only October that was brutally cold through that area, which is why we see such a bias over on the colder side of things. So again, this is evidence pointing me toward a higher level of trust in this. This is the new long-range update for December, January, and February. And on the left, I have the temperature anomalies, and on the right, I have the precipitation. Now, if you notice, across the map on the left, the U.S. has got a warm bias to it. It's warm. We can see that we're expecting temperatures to be a degree or 2, maybe 3 above average for this winter. Now that still means that winter is going to be winter. It'll be cold, but the warmer anomalies that you see here suggest that the coldest air will be anchored somewhere outside of the lower 48. We'll get cold air intrusions. We'll get polar vortex disruptions. We're going to get shots at cold air that last. But when we average 3 months, this is what the long-range European is currently suggesting. Now, the precipitation map is a bit more intriguing to me. You can see that things are split across the West. Wetter than average here, much drier across, well, not only California, but the southern tier of the United States. Something we've been discussing, there seems to be a lack of a strong subtropical branch of the jet stream cutting from California over to Texas. We still anticipate a strong Ohio River Valley storm track. And if you look over here in the Carolinas, we see near normal, maybe even a slight dry bias on the precipitation with above average temperatures for this winter. Now, remember, this is just a broad brush stroke here of what winter could look like, and it is largely dominated by the current La Nina, which I'm going to show you again in a few moments. But I wanted you to see these data because in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get updates from the National Multi-Model Ensemble and some other modeling groups to supplement this idea. Okay, with that, what did we get recently? Well, it was incredibly wet from the last system that went racing through here. And you can see that over in the Carolinas, just in the last week, which is what we're looking at here, some locations picking up between 1 and upwards of 3 inches of rainfall. That got, of course, a whole lot more as you went up here toward the north and east. But I want to put this into context because look at where we currently sit from January 1st to December the 7th, looking at 128 years worth of data here. Every climate reporting district that you see the number 1 in, look down there in North Carolina, that is a climate reporting district that over that time period is the wettest we've ever observed. And even in northeastern parts of North Carolina, where we see those 9s, it's still very, very wet. And so that recent rainfall pushed us up to the number 1 spot in those regions. I just wanted you to see that before we get going with this forecast. Well, what is in the forecast? Well, I'm showing this map today to every region across North America. And the reason why is because the pieces that you see moving here will be coming together in the next several days to the next week to affect basically every place across the U.S. Now, to begin with, This right here is what we call the intertropical convergence zone. And there's a breakoff. Do you see it right here of this stream of moisture, as noted here in the infrared satellite temperatures, that's pushing this low pressure system across North Carolina early this morning. By midday, this will be gone. And by the way, to your north, right here in parts of Virginia and in the Appalachian Mountains, we'll get some snow out of this. There's a massive ridge that builds up here into central Canada. I'll show you these temperatures in a moment and how they're going to moderate throughout this week because you are cold to start the week. But for the upcoming weekend, this will be the storm system, especially the back side of it, that we're going to watch carefully to be bringing in a setup that's going to give us a pretty unsettled time period. But it's several days away, okay? I'll get to that in just a few moments. All right, right now we are dealing with the nose of that subtropical jet coming through. And as I'm animating forward here for you, this is the high-resolution NAM model. Now you notice that after it goes through, when you go all the way up to Wednesday, that's it for the rest of the week. But we can see this morning, got a cold rain that spread through early this morning, got the snow that's on the northern side of it in Virginia, but also coming in here into the Appalachian Mountains. But watch this. This is by the time we get to 11 a.m., getting through the early afternoon, it's done by this evening, and it's pushed off to the east. And as you saw, that's it. Everything shuts down. We're going to start to see some warmer conditions come in and higher atmospheric pressure. Now, to put that into the context of this Tuesday through this Saturday, we're going to be dry. Can you see it here? But there is a system right in through here that'll be taking shape on Saturday that will be moving through over the weekend, as I mentioned, that it's going to increase our chances of precipitation. So to see that, I want you to know where it is right now. This is kind of cool stuff. Okay, jet stream comes screaming today across the Pacific and then builds into a large ridge that goes up into Canada. I'll show you what that does to your temperatures in a few moments. But I want you to watch this right here. And believe it or not, the little shortwave that's right there, it does not look like much, but that, well, these two things are going to combine right here by the end of the week over the central part of the United States and then race off into a low pressure system that's going to run up north. In fact, I need to adjust that arrow. They're going to really do something more like that, okay? Now today you're dealing with this, but that's getting off the coast relatively quickly. Let me show you these pieces coming together. You ready? Here's the first little wave I want you to watch. Here's the second one. And here's the trough that's keeping us cold to start the week. There it is. Playing this forward, we can let this go all the way out. There it is. Let's just get all the way to Thursday. Ridge builds in. Oh, warmer temperatures on their way. Drier week are on their way. But you're going to have to wait for the warm temperatures to get here. There's the trough that connects with that cutoff low that went off of California. And they come together right here by the time we get to Friday into Saturday. And what this is going to do is build a low. Like I said, it's going to go through the Great Lakes. And as it goes racing up here toward the northeast, really through parts of Ontario and Quebec, the front gets dragged through us over the weekend and we get our next chance at precipitation. So you're going to get precip today and then go the rest of the week with very little chances of any. And then next weekend at the end of it coming through with a chance of rainfall. But then that cuts out. And I'm going to be watching a system December 15th and 16th that's going to go through the middle part of the United States. The models are suggesting that this trough stretches out right here, maybe around the 17th, and that might bring some precipitation over us, maybe the 17th or the 18th. But that's it. Overall, our next 10 days really just have what we've got today, plus what's coming next Sunday, really, Sunday into Monday, and then that's it. Watch what the atmosphere does. I'm going to play this. Do you see how the cold air reestablishes itself right here over Alaska? And that's key to understanding this upcoming precipitation pattern and temperature pattern beyond that. So here's that cold rain early this morning. Let's get this playing forward. We can just let it go all the way to, that's Wednesday night. Let's just go out to now Friday morning. Still high pressure and control. Your temperature's finally warming up at this point, but you can see the low pressure cell that's taking shape right here in the central part of the U.S. So now we get the warm up for Friday. It then goes into Saturday, and here is the front Saturday afternoon coming through like Indiana all the way down to Alabama, Mississippi. That then gets to us by Sunday morning. There it is. There's the front that comes through, and we do get a blast of colder air that comes in on the back side of this. But that is our next chance at precipitation. So that system moves on out, and yes, it will be a cold start to next week as well. But there's another system that's reforming right here December 15th, 16th. You can see the high pressure cell just off our coast feeding that one full of moisture, and it might get to us next Thursday or Friday. So that's, again, the 16th, 17th, 18th time frame. Okay, putting it all together, though, our next 10 days overall, we've got a drier bias because we have limited chances of getting precipitation coming through. And when it does come through, like the system this upcoming weekend, it's moving pretty quickly. So that's at least good news to be discussing given how wet this year has been so far, like we talked about a few minutes ago. But take a look at how things reset after day 10. Do you see the cold air anchoring back into this area? See the trough that's in place here? Okay, that trough by day 10, which will be the 17th, is what might sweep through a front, bringing us a chance at precipitation. But after that moves through, we'll go back over drier, and that's why much of week 2 is showing up on the drier side of things. Interestingly enough, look at how dry California stays, while to the north of that line very wet. That's because the flow comes screaming around like this, and there is no strong subtropical jet stream to cut into California. Again, that's going to be critical for the rest of our winter, not only from California, but all the way across the southern tier of the United States. I'll keep you updated on that with each video, okay? Let's move over to temperatures. Over the last week, that big ridge that built here into Canada was more than 20 degrees warmer than average over the last week. Where was all the cold air compared to normal? Pretty far to the south, and we're dealing with that to begin this week as this has finally moved over here toward the East Coast. Now, we have to keep in mind that at this time of year, we can get these disruptions in the polar vortex, which could be critical to our upcoming temperature pattern. And I want to continue that discussion now. So this is where the polar vortex is currently sitting today. We actually have two separate almost centers to it. You see there's one here and one there. But the polar vortex winds are quite strong. As we move this forecast forward, though, it regains its composure right here until we get out to the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And you can see at that point the polar vortex is tending to elongate. One branch sitting here over the Hudson Bay and another one over this part of Russia. This warm-up happening here in the Chukchi Sea or in the Bering Sea or over this part of Siberia is helping to displace it. Now, why I'm concerned about that is that up until this point in the year, I know this graph is a little bit complicated, but you see this black line running right through the middle? That's average. So we call that average polar vortex strength. The stronger the polar vortex, the more tight its grip is on the cold air and keeping it over the North Pole. Now, it's currently sitting here above average. But do you see how the forecast takes it down below there temporarily? What we're going to watch out for is anytime it goes from here farther down. And that may be toward the end of this month or even in January. But just to start to see the polar vortex wobble a bit like this is something that piques my interest, and I want to keep an eye on it. It is not connecting with the troposphere. Remember, the polar vortex is in the stratosphere. This is not connecting yet with the troposphere, which is when we start to see those big cold air outbreaks. So watch what happens. Our cold air is temporary. It is cold today. It's going to be cold again tomorrow. See that? But do you see how hot it's going to be compared to normal in the central U.S. for Wednesday? That finally moves over us by the time we get to Thursday. Oh, finally, some warmer temperatures here. And then we go from there into Friday and Saturday and Sunday. It will be on Sunday that the cold front comes through. So you've got a cold start to this week and a very warm finish. And again, this is compared to average. Where do we go after that? Well, remember, I told you the pattern's going to reset over Canada and Alaska. So day 5 through 10 brings the colder air back here, and both the GFS and the European see it. One thing to note, the European is warmer across the lower 48 than the GFS at this point. But overall, they're quite similar in their forecasts. And you go out to day 10 through 15, they mimic each other quite well, actually, with the coldest air anchored over Alaska and broad scale mild compared to normal for this time of year, milder conditions here across the United States. All right. From there, let's talk about temperatures in the ocean, because our La Nina here has got very strong trade winds that are pushing all the way to about 125 east, which is right there. Now, why do I talk about that? Well, in this area, we're going to have our best upper level motion in the atmosphere, and we're going to suppress it quite a bit more over here. Now, what that is in the context of is what's going on with La Nina and South America. And we know that right now South America seems to be the weather part of the market, right? So soil moisture, we continue to see that through key growing regions in South America. Both the SMAP data shows dry conditions, and so does GRACE. Real quick, this is Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. Those are some of the key growing areas. It's not to say that they don't grow a lot outside of that, but those are key growing areas that we watch. Now, what I'm noticing is that over the next week, this area and through here is getting quite a bit of good rainfall, and they need it. That's going to help recharge their soil, bringing the soil moisture levels back up, in some places 10 to 15% above what they are to start this week. But it is dry south. Can you see that? All the way into parts of Argentina. What about week 2? Well, we start to see some shifts in the MJO. Therefore, we dry out, for example, Mato Grosso compared to normal. And that area may lose 5 to 10% of its soil moisture after gaining some of it. And where does it go wet? Paraguay, down here into Paraná, and also these key regions in Argentina. So do you see how South America is kind of teeter-tottering back and forth between big problems and then some relief? Well, we ask ourselves, what does the long-range forecast suggest? So let's do the same thing we did at the beginning of the video. From August, this was the forecast for September, October, November. This is what actually happened over here on the right. Now, it was very, very dry according to the CPC data across a broad sector of Brazil's growing region. In some locations there, 15 to 20 inches behind normal on precip, which goes off my color bar here. Now, could we say that the models saw that? I guess we could, because they favor drier conditions there. But it certainly wasn't wet in through here, and it wasn't really wet in this area either. So we wouldn't say that the skill of the model has been overly accurate, but it at least picked up on a few important things. Now, why I'm showing you this is because this is the latest data. And while the models continue to predict wetter than average conditions in through here, drier in Argentina, and then drier in northern and eastern Brazil, this would be absolutely critical to the success of the first crop of soybeans. If it does do this pattern, southern Brazil growing areas will do fine. But I'll be concerned about Mato Grosso. I'll be concerned about Bahia, Tocantins, Minas Gerais. That's these areas over here. Argentina. We had been predicting Argentina would look like this all along, simply because La Nina tends to have a stronger correlation with Argentinian precipitation patterns during winter. So what I'm trying to tell you is we have to watch this carefully because South America's growing season this year is facing some larger regions of adversity with respect to precipitation. And I believe that there's a bit of a weather premium in the market right now because of it. Now, I'm not a market expert, but it's just something that I'm watching carefully, and I want to keep reporting back to you, okay? Thanks for your attention. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.